Josh, I'll leave it to you. Hold on, I'll leave it to you to make introductions.
Hello, and welcome to a Tuesday episode of Heroes Die. Today we're going to be playing Blades in the Dark by Evil Hat Games. But before we get into that, let's say some introductions.
Uh,
Who's next?
yeah, so you got me. I'm Jason. Today I don't know what I'll be playing because I'm going to be learning how to play Blades in the Dark. This is my first time, so Josh is going to be teaching me, and hopefully y'all will enjoy learning along with me. And I'm joined by on my right, wrong way, on my left.
I don't know where I am, but hello, I am Paula, and I almost called this Heroes in the Dark, but it's Blades in the Dark. But Heroes in the Dark sounds really cool too. So, yeah, I've played this actually once before with Josh, but I don't really remember much, and that was a long time ago. So, this will be a refresher course for me, relearning how to play. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit different today. It's going to be a little bit more mechanic talks than a lot of our other games have been. It's going to be, I'm going to be utilizing a virtual tabletop that's relatively new. It's One More Multiverse, strongly recommend it, but I'm going to be using that for the first time on stream here. So a lot of learning. It's going to be a little bit more casual, I think, but I'll get to see some things that you don't normally get to see on stream, like how do these folks create their characters? Where do they get inspiration from? We'll also be learning Blades in the Dark together. So you get to learn a game, get to see behind the scenes, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Just to get some of the stuff out of the way, make sure you like us, click all the little buttons. Follow us on social media. We're at Heroes Die Show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And join our Discord. I've been saying to anybody who will listen that Blades in the Dark is one of the most fun games. The reason I join groups is to eventually sucker these people into playing this game with me. So if you want to play, get in our Discord and tell me, and I will play with anybody anytime. So join our Discord. It's a great little community we got in there. Follow us on social media. Click all the little buttons. And with that, let's just go ahead and get started. So a little bit about Blades in the Dark. The mechanics are very much intertwined with the lore, and the lore is great. A lot of really, really cool world building. We're going to be surface level today. We're just trying to get a game going. So some of just the highlights. And if this interests you at all, buy the book just to read like a novel. It's great. The gates of death stopped working. So if somebody died, they didn't have a place to go to. On top of that, the sun exploded when the gates of death filled up. There is no more sun. There's some sparkles, some remnants that provide the faintest amount of light, but the world of Blades in the Dark is dark, literally. There's no sun. Along with that, food sources became much different. You didn't like cattle, way too expensive if you don't have a sun to feed them, to get the plants. So eels, mushrooms, things you can grow in the dark are the way of the world. Except a new energy source got found. When the gates of death stopped working, if you died, you came back as a ghost a couple days later. And turns out these ghosts are a great source of electroplasm, which is what fuels all the different gadgets, the street lights, the things that made the world be able to keep working without a literal sun. Now, when a person dies, we can get a little bit of electroplasm from that ghost. And we hope we do, because a ghost left alone, it's going to go feral eventually. And so we needed to keep these ghosts in check, and we found out that they're made of electroplasm. But what's even better than a ghost for electroplasm were these new things in the sea called leviathans. And I'll get to I'm sure you have questions, and I will get to them in one moment. But leviathans are the best source of electroplasm, and you can think of these as the whales in Moby Dick. These fleets of boats go out and hunt these gigantic demon creatures because they can get some raw electroplasm. And that's what they use to fuel the ghost gate around the city that stops all the ghosts from getting out. But what about the ghosts that were already there? the spirit wardens take care of those. If somebody dies within the city limits, a crow will leave and find the body. The spirit wardens will come, cremate them, harvest them for electroplasm, and we don't have to worry about ghosts inside the city limits. And that's our city is Duskwall or Duskval, depending on how you came to the city, what your background was. And the city is very much a character in this game. Duskfall is you're trapped. You can't leave the city. No matter how high the heat is for our scoundrels, no matter how much the police want to catch them or they've made some powerful enemies, there's a ghost gate. And on the other side of that is death and no sun, no electroplasm to fuel any of the things you've gotten accustomed to. So you're stuck no matter how hot the heat gets. And with that, I'll just open it up to some basic questions because this might inspire your characters in some ways. So I know you had one, Jason.
I now have more than I did when I was going to ask. So first off, ghosts are energy fuel, basically.
Yes. So when you
Okay.
die, your spirit comes back and it's formed of electroplasm. And they start off normal at first, or maybe kind of spooky. I mean, it's going to shock you if you see a ghost in person, but they're kind of the haunting traditional ghosts for a little bit. But sure enough, eventually they all seem to go feral and just become these electricity fueled with electroplasm, this magic demon force that is inside all of us a little bit, comes out, comes to life, and becomes a real problem if not checked.
Okay, cool. There are spirit wardens who go around the city, I assume with some sort of device that pulls these ghosts into a container that is then used for fuel.
Well, while they ain't afraid of no ghost, they
Thank
don't
you.
necessarily.
Yes.
Yeah, if a ghost is already formed, then you got to just get rid of the ghost. And they use their different ways of attuning to the ghost field to try to fight them with, fight fire with fire. So ghost powers versus ghost power, and they try to vanquish it. If the person's just died, but they haven't, it takes a couple days before the ghost comes out. So they need to get to the body very quickly, and they follow the crows to get to the body very quickly so they can cremate the body and just automatically sort of consume that energy without having to fight an actual ghost. Why this is important is that you folks will be playing some scoundrels. You're going to be on the wrong side of the law pretty much by default. Maybe you're vigilantes, maybe it's for a greater good, but the law is corrupt in Duskfall and you want no part of it. But be careful about leaving any bodies, because if somebody dies, a crow will be there very shortly, followed by people that fight ghosts. So certainly wouldn't be afraid of you folks. So you definitely don't want that kind of heat. So be careful about, you can play assassins, and that's certainly an option. And we'll get to, what your crew is all about soon. But be careful about how you go about your business, because everybody's watching everybody. It's a small town. It's a big city. But again, everybody's stuck there. There's some trains that do go from town to town in the Empire. And Duskfall is important to the Empire because it's the best. It has these Leviathan hunters that can export this raw electroplasm. There is some farms, some eel farms and some mushroom farms available, but most of your food's going to be imported. So there's some travel between cities, but probably very, very expensive, probably very, very hard to arrange. So for the most part, you're stuck. So you don't want heat.
Okay, that fits. Paula, do you have anything before I keep going? Because I've got at least one more, probably two in the chamber.
So the city is kind of like a Victorian London steampunk vibe going on. The setting.
Yes. So yeah, the setting is approximately maybe 1870, I think it says in the book. Very Jack the Ripper style going on. It's dust. It's very foggy all the time. It's very dark, very damp, but yeah, very Victorian. Because you guys are close to the water, Duskfall's very close to the water. There's canals that go all through the city. And one of the factions that run the canals are the gondoliers. And that's if you don't want the spirit wardens involved. Gondoliers are known to know how to handle ghosts. So that's kind of your mom and pop shop if you don't want corporate involved. So if maybe you don't want grandma taken away to be cremated and power the city. Maybe you can contact one of the gondoliers in the canal, and for the right price or with the right connection, you could make sure her passing is a little bit more comfortable or something along those lines.
Doesn't get ground up and turned into spirit fuel.
Yeah, into a battery, right?
Yeah.
So, what are these leviathans again? They're like giant whales that are whale ghosts,
Yeah.
or
So they're like most things in Blades at the Dark, they're not very described in a lot of detail. Everything is written like a plot hook, and it's written vague intentionally. So our version might be a little bit different. And that goes for anything I've already said. I can't promise I'm 100% lore accurate because the lore changes every single time. But Leviathans in general are demons, which have a very strong connection with Electroplasm. And they're these big, monstrous whale creatures. It's very, very dangerous to hunt them, even though they have these giant, giant boats, like the biggest battle cruisers today, where you'd picture helicopters and stuff like that. These are the sizes of these boats that still pale in the size of these leviathans. And, you know, can't even say that they die, but maybe you just get enough of a piece of one that you call it a good day. It's very dangerous, but it pays well. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, Duskfall is a mining town in the sense that there's one industry that really fuels everything else. I mean, there's the university,
Quite literally.
there's markets, but really the lifeblood is the Leviathan blood. It is this electroplasm, and it's so much more rich in resources than using people fuel. That's more just to worry about stopping the ghosts and a little bit less about how we actually run the city. And Leviathans are where they go for that.
Love it. Yeah. So if anyone read Gideon the Ninth, I immediately went to their Leviathans as the monster. So loving this tremendously already. All right. So there's a ghost shield around the city that is there to keep feral ghosts out. Is that the gist of it?
Yep. So in between there and other cities that are walled in by these fences is it's barren wasteland filled with roaming ghosts. The air is very polluted and just hard to breathe. And there's certain factions that go out and manage to make their living, just being as raiders, essentially. So you have to worry about them as well. There's trains that go in between, and they have railjacks whose job is just to fight ghosts while the train travels from town to town, so that the feral ghosts or raiders don't do the. And those are some badass people. So that's a whole occupation, very dangerous, probably up there with Leviathan hunting, is just the railjacks that protect the train as it goes through the Deathlands between cities. So it's way easier to stay on the side of the fence.
I'm so glad I didn't learn anything about this beforehand, because I have so much joy right now that is just spilling out of me. I love this, and I
So
can't
that's
wait
the
to
world.
game
And so
master this.
let's zoom in a little bit and focus on what we're going to be doing as players. So Blades in the Dark, it's very cinematic. It's fiction first, narrative driven, all those fun buzzwords. So it's not necessarily it's not difficult to create the character that you have in your head. So we're going to be creating two different things. We're going to be creating individually. Each of you is going to be creating a character. And then we're also going to be creating a crew. You guys are collectively a group of, and this word comes up a lot and I love it, you're scoundrels, right? You're underdogs. You're broke. Maybe you have, what you have is your skills. You're competent at what you do. You probably have some connections. You probably have some enemies. And the way that the character creation, we're going to explore some of those and get a really good starting point. And then we're going to figure out that's who you are as individuals, but you level up yourselves and your crew as progression goes on, because you as individuals, your city, your faction, the city, the empire. The game has a lot of different scale going on. So let's focus first on who do you want to play. And I'm sure we'll get into more lore. The way it works is you end up talking about more lore as we go. Like I said, we're using a new tabletop I'm not super familiar with, but I've fallen in love with it already. It's one more Multiverses tabletop. But if who wants to create a character first? Let's kind of go through one at a time, and we can sort of talk about the options and things like that.
Ladies first.
Sure.
All right. So if you upper right-hand corner, go to crew. Should be your second option, little pink person.
I don't know if I'm seeing the same thing as
Okay.
you. Let's see. Oh, I do. I see it. I got it. Crew.
Okay. And you should see where it says no playbook. Do you see a way to create your playbook?
Create a playbook.
Okay. And Jason, are you following along as well? Do you have a spectate playbook creation button to click on, Jason?
No, I have create playbook, select playbook, and I have no playbook.
Okay. So I think it might be a GM only feature, but I can see what you see, Paula.
Okay.
And Jason, if you go ahead and just hit create playbook, you'll be on a very similar screen.
Okay.
And you can sort of follow along with at least the tabs that we're under.
Okay.
So if you
do
go
we need to read this?
we won't necessarily need to read it word for word.
Okay.
But I'll kind of be guiding you along.
Okay.
Even the GM notes, I have a little section where it says I should be guiding you along.
Okay.
One of the features, again, just to shout out this wonderful virtual tabletop, I have a wiki where I can just type in a rule and it'll spit out exactly what's in the book. So it's very quick for me to look things up. So hopefully we don't hit any snags. But go ahead and click playbook in the top tab. And these are the playbooks are essentially your classes, and Blades is really big on let's not call them classes, but that's just the easiest way to the kind of character that you want to play as. And you have some options from the Cutter, who is more of a brawler, a fighter. You have the Sharpshooter, the Hound, the Technician, kind of a Tinkerer, and the Leech. You have the Lurk, who is more of your traditional sneaky rogue-like creature or character. My favorite is the Spider, who doesn't necessarily have, focus on what's on the field, but on connections, on making deals beforehand. One of the things I love about Blades in the Dark is that, as I said, it's cinematic and it's very heist oriented. And every heist movie has the flashback scene, right? Where they say, aha, this is exactly how I wanted it to go. And they flash back to 3 days later and setting up this plan.
I love
Blades
that.
has that, right? And that's like the best thing to be included in a game. And the reason I really loved the game at first was if you play the Spider, you might not even go with everybody else on the field. You could just pipe in whenever you'd like and say, flashback to me bribing that guard a week later. Flashback to me having the janitor hide a gun under the table, right? And that's a completely fair way to play. You're still involved as it's very storytelling, collective storytelling. We're going to be in a writer's room together as player and as DM or as GM. We're going to be chatting about what would be the coolest outcome for this. So the Spider has a lot of fun ways to throw that out and say, what if I did this? And then the GM says, yeah, that sounds fun. Let's see what happens. So that's my shout out to that particular playbook personally. But there's the Whisper, who is very attuned with the ghost field, and anybody can use any skill. You're not locked in. This is kind of general big picture what you want to play, but they're the ones more likely to use ghosts to their advantage in some way. And then there's the Slide, who is a spy, a subtle manipulator. They're more likely to be your bard type, your face, kind of schmoozing and dealing. But again, don't think of these as classes. These are kind of starting points for these tropes you want to call on. And then the game will sort of guide you to create a character that's good at those sorts of things. So Paula, what are you leaning towards?
I want to be a Slide. That sounds like fun.
So go ahead and select Slide.
Can I make a Lurk then? Because
yeah, do it.
Nice.
Okay, Slide. Right. I've selected that.
All right, so then you can go up to the next tab, which is Heritage.
Heritage. Okay.
So this is kind of more the world building outside of the city. And I want to kind of avoid going into too much detail about all of these again, just for time purposes, not saying they're not interesting and fun, but for today's purposes, let's assume both of you grew up in this city. So you're both going to be from Akaros, the first option there. And I don't want to railroad you. It's, again, just in the interest of time. Both select that, so you're familiar with the city. You'll have connections there. You grew up there.
Okay.
Perfect. Got it.
Now for your background, this is what's your day job, or when you're not out scoundreling or breaking the law, or just maybe that was it. An underworld is an option for that, but you have different just backgrounds to call on. What sort of would be your skill set outside of whatever playbook you just chose? And the options are academic, labor, law, trade, military, noble, underworld.
I'm gonna go noble.
All right.
I'm gonna invert that, and I'm going underworld.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, absolute criminal from the get-go.
Right. You grew up here. Crime is your game. So now we get into sort of the actual dice mechanics. These are going to be your skills, or what they call in Blades of the Dark, actions. These are going to be actually what you're rolling when we roll some dice, because it is a TTRPG, wouldn't be complete without dice. And the basic dice system is going to be D6, a pool of D6s. So for every point you have in these skills, you will get one extra D6 to roll when you eventually roll. We'll get into how that works. But for right now, you can think of it's going to be roll D6, as many D6s as you're supposed to based on your skills and other modifiers. Keep the highest. So the more dice you're rolling, the better odds you have of getting a higher number. And we'll get into that when we get into action rolls. But for right now, the general skills that you can have, and some are probably already assigned based on what playbook you decided as, but you should have more that you can place. But I'll just go over the skills while you folks decide what you want. Hunt is tracking something carefully. Study is scrutinizing details and interpreting evidence. Survey is observing a situation, anticipating an outcome. Tinker is fiddle with devices. Finesse is going to be more your dexterity. Prowl is being quiet. Skirmish is brawling, fighting. Wreck is bursting down walls or making explosions, generally just creating havoc and destruction. Attune is tapping into that ghost field energy, summoning ghosts or those sorts of things. Command is sort of your intimidation to try to compel someone by fear. Consort is to be friendly, and typically used amongst friends or someone who you're trying to be friends with, as opposed to the next skill, sway, which is more, I'm going to maybe be charming but not friendly. I'm not saying that you owe me something. I'm going to make you want to do something. I'm going to convince you to do something. And consort is more, we're friends already. So those are your skills, and those are the only skills we have. So when it comes time to roll, I will ask the players what skill they would like to use. The DM doesn't call for checks. I'm never going to say, give me your hunt roll, give me your study roll. I will present obstacles as we're playing. You'll tell me what you want to do. I'll tell you what the obstacle is, and you tell me what skill seems best suited or would be coolest to see. And we'll decide what happens depending on how well you roll and what the narrative is, what's going on in the fiction at the time. So with that, have you folks selected some of your skills, or do you have any questions about the skills?
So we get 3 playbook defaults that are already put in for us, and then 4 more that we can put into whatever we want.
Yep. And the encouragement is to think of the background you chose, or think of your heritage, which again, I kind of shoehorned you in, but think of the things your character would be good at. So when you put a point into something, it's good for a player to think, why that? What makes me special, or what makes in my background, my character's history, whatever, that makes them extra good at that. If you have 0 in a skill, you can still roll. It's going to be essentially at a disadvantage. You're going to take the lowest, but everybody can do everything. You guys are all competent. You don't have to be a whisper to attune to the ghost field. You don't have to be a hunter to shoot somebody. So don't feel like you have to spread out your points in a certain way because, oh, I don't want to fail a perception check. That's not a thing. So it's okay to have 0, but you're extra good at certain things. So what are those extra things that you guys decided on?
So I put a point into studying, scrutinizing details, and interpreting evidence. I put a point into surveying, observing situation, anticipating outcomes. And then I put 2 points into prowling, traversing skillfully and quietly. And I already had 1 point into consort, socializing with friends, and 2 points in sway, influencing with guile, charm, or argument.
Very nice.
Nice. I put 1 into hunt. I had 1 in finesse, and I added a second one, and I had 2 in prowl, so I stuck with that. And then I added 2 into skirmish because I thought, why not be some sort of horrible, sneaky, dangerous, roguish person.
Scoundrel. Yes.
This guy's a real scoundrel, and one that you don't want following him. Following
Perfect.
you.
So the highest you can have in a stat or a skill, an action, is 4. But during character creation, you're limited to 2. So eventually you can have a much larger dice pool, twice as big as you have now as you level up your character. And we'll get into experience and stuff like that at the end. But if you folks are done there, next you get to pick your special playbook ability. These will be different for each of you based on what playbook you started with. What's funny, though, is that the final one on both of yours is going to be called Veteran. And Veteran just means I want to pick something from somebody else's playbook. So you could start with a Whisper and end up picking a Lurk's special ability. That's what I mean when I say they're not really classes, because you could get everything you wanted from somebody else's quote unquote class to fit whatever character you want to play as. I'd recommend, though, especially for first time players, sticking to what your playbook is built in or encouraged. It's just a lot easier. There's probably a reason you picked that playbook. So there's something in there that will let you be better at or do something nifty that fits with your original character more likely than another playbook. I'm also stalling for time as I try to give our players a chance to read all the options that they have.
I think I want to choose. Well, I'm waffling between mesmerism, which allows you to sway someone. When you sway someone, you may cause them to forget that it's happened until they next interact with you. And then there's the trust in me, which is you get one plus 1 die versus a target with whom you have an intimate relationship. So my question is, what exactly does that mean? You get plus 1 die versus a target with whom you have an intimate relationship.
So when you roll a sway with someone with whom you have an intimate relationship, and again, these aren't defined terms. What that means at one table could be different than other tables, but someone that you know well and you try to sway them or use a sway, you would get 1 extra die in your pool. So rolls are done, like I said, based on how many skill points you had. Let's say you have 2 in sway. With this, you would have 3 dice you roll. Again, keep the highest. That's kind of the broad picture of what it means when you say plus 1 die. So again, that's not limiting the 4 skills you could eventually have. The highest amount of dice you would ever have to roll in this game, I'm pretty sure, is 6. I think there might be like really weird edge cases where maybe it gets higher, but realistically, 66s would be a phenomenal roll where you have all these sort of little perks stacked up together. So that's what that means generally.
Okay, I'm going to choose that one. I'm going to choose trust in me.
Trust in you, absolutely. And have you had a chance, Jason?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what I wanted until I read reflexes. and reflex is what I'm going with. So when there's a question about who acts first, the answer is you. So there's a quote that I absolutely love, which is, "He who strikes first often strikes last." And that is definitely going to be my mantra.
There you go. Shoot first, ask questions. If you ever get around to it, probably just shooting somebody else instead. Um, Absolutely. I love it. So next you get to we talked a little bit about what's an intimate relationship. Well, you start out with one friend. You probably have some enemies out there, but at least one person not directly in your crew, or some sort of general friend you have on the outside with you. Now, the game will give you, based on which playbook you're playing as, some suggested friends. They're defined very vaguely, often just a word or two that describes who they are. Other than that, you decide who they are as the player. That's what I mean when I say everybody's city is a little different, because my friend Grace might be your enemy Grace, and they're two completely different people. So everybody's, we're all using the same names. There's some themes that run throughout the game, but everybody's city is a little different. Um, you'll also be picking after this your rival. So, like I said, you have some enemies, but who's the one person that probably has your back?
I'm gonna go with um gosh, okay. It's between two. There's Bazo Baz. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. I don't know. Bazo Baz, a
It's
gang.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, however you say it is correct.
It's right. It's canon. Who is a gang leader, and they suggest perhaps a paramour pursuing your affections, or perhaps a former lover now scorned, which I love that. And then there was Clyra, a tavern owner, perhaps a good source of gossip. And I like both of those. I think Clyra's more like practical, because source of gossip is always good, but I really like the idea of having like a former scorned lover. Um, I
Well, you will,
feel,
like I said, you're going to get to pick your rival from the same list. It's
oh,
going to be the same group of people to choose from. So you're choosing one as your friend and one of those as your rival. So if that's the dynamic, like, we got you. We got you.
perfect. I will definitely then choose Clyra as my friend, the tavern owner, and Bazo Baz, my former scorned lover, as my rival.
Perfect. Perfect. And how about you, Jason?
My friend is Telda. I'm going really, really right down the line stereotypical here. Telda the beggar, who taught me my skills. And my rival is Darmit the blue coat, which I believe is a cop, right? It's a city
That's
cop.
it. You nailed it. So we can
Uh,
we can talk a little bit about the blue coats if you'd like, because they're a big part of, if you're a scoundrel and you're afraid of the law, there's a couple different uh, law enforcement bodies. The one is the spirit wardens, right? I mean, they're the ones that are going to be your showing up at every homicide for sure. But they really just handled the bodies. They're not really super interested in how they got there. So the blue coats are your city cops. They are corrupt. They are essentially, and the way the game mechanics handle them, another gang, just like any other gang running around in Blades in the Dark. But they do have the law on their side. So they're very corrupt, very bribable. They have personal vendettas against different people, different groups, different factions. Above them is the inspectors, and they are more like your FBI type agents. They're more the federal. They work for the empire, not the city. So they really want just to keep peace. They're all outsiders. You're not allowed to be an inspector of the city that you're from, to keep it all to keep that corruption away. So if the inspectors are after you, you got a real problem, because they're not going to be nearly as easy to bribe or make some paperwork disappear, do a favor, and so blue coats are your beat cops. So having one as a rival is interesting, because you're certainly going to be very likely to run afoul of some blue coats.
nice. Excellent. Yeah. I love that.
So next up in character creation is your vice. the main resource you're going to be spending isn't hit points. You don't really have hit points in Blades in the Dark. It's stress. You're going to be able to do what you want to do, but it's going to take a toll on your psyche. Stress is how you resist bad consequences, how you push yourself for an extra die. It's really what you're going to be spending to get that extra little scoundrel luck you need to get some done, especially when everybody else has way more money and equipment than you do, but you got stress to spare. The problem is, what do we do when we build up all
Sounds
this
like real
stress?
life.
If you, yeah, oh, absolutely, right? Because here's the kicker: if you take too much stress, you take a trauma.
Great. Yeah.
Completely, yeah. So that's
I
the
didn't
fear,
need this
right?
part, Josh.
You take a trauma. If you take it, you're temporarily out of the scene, and you get to pick from a fun list of what kind of trauma was instilled because I got too stressed out. Therefore, you got to choose your vice wisely. In between scores, in between jobs, you're going to have downtime, and you're going to need to burn some stress. How do you do that? And your options, you can pick anything you'd like, but the suggested options are faith, gambling, luxury, obligation, pleasure, stupor, and weird. So those are it's also helpful to think of, where does my character go? They must know somebody or have a favorite gambling hall or a church they belong to. If you have obligation, it could be to a day job or maybe a family member. So by defining what your vice is, it's also helpful to think of your vice purveyor, especially if it's something that you could get cut off from if you overindulge, which is, we'll get to that during the vice thing. But so think of your vice and think of a vice purveyor. Where do you go to take a load off after a busy day of heisting and running scores?
So just for context, stupor would be something like drinking or drugs.
Yes, I think that's generally what it would be. It could be, they're not very firm. So, for example, I could go into a rage stupor and I just become belligerent with rage, but afterwards I feel less stressed. So there's different ways you can play it up with your character, and these are kind of just the broad themes to get you thinking in the right direction of what some options are. Mechanically, there's no difference in this choice. This is flavor. Flavor is very important in Blades in the Dark, so to that extent, it's an important decision, but there's not a min-max option here of optimizing for anything other than cool narrative.
I feel like narratively, mine would be luxury. And since I come from a noble background, and if I'm pulling from like real life here, I feel like my character would be, her vice would be very expensive, high quality tea. And she's going to get that from the tavern owner friend of hers who like maybe imports it, or like, yeah. But yeah, she's spending a lot of money on rare, expensive, high quality tea. Can that be my vice?
And I think that's perfect,
Okay.
especially as you said, you have a noble background. Tea would be really expensive unless it's mushroom tea. Anything
Oh.
green needs some powerful electroplasm lights to replicate the sun that no longer is. So it's definitely a luxury. Tea is a luxury in this world, and I think that's a great vice for a noble background, is, you know, this rare tea that takes a lot of energy, a lot of money just to grow just a few tea leaves. So that's very good. Perfect.
And it's my actual vice in real life. So
perfect. So something to draw from. Always play from something you know, right?
yes, exactly.
I have a question. What about weird? So what's an example of weird? Like,
Weird
could it
would
be,
be
oh, sorry.
Into the occult, into magic, into demons. Remember, there's these leviathans, so maybe being very interested in them or other demons. There's a lot of these unknown cults, and whether it's faith or weird is maybe up to interpretation. Maybe your character thinks it's faith, but others would call it weird. So that's, you can pick either of those. But weird is essentially what a lot of whispers would pick as they attune to the ghost field. It's the supernatural, the unknown, and probably dark.
Okay, because I was thinking, just speculating. I assume there's like some big docks in the city.
Oh, absolutely. The docks is a whole district essentially.
So I like the idea that, my person grew up, living in and around sewers and or the docks, or maybe even under the docks periodically, right? And found this like horrible demon thing down there, and just thinks it's so cool, and like brings it things periodically. And that's where, like, I don't have good relationships with people, but I'll like bring, like, I don't know, like rats, like live rats or other things down to this weird demon thing, and I feed it in, and then I like talk to it, and it's weird and it doesn't talk to me, but that's what
I love it.
That's what I was going for.
Super disturbing and
Thank you.
amazing.
The fun part is that you could call that weird or obligation if it was something that you had to feed. But I think weird is a great category, but I just use that as an example of how your character thinks it, what makes it a vice. And I think that what makes it a vice in your case is very fun, right? Like there's this demon that like I can't help but feed, but when I feed it, I get less stressed. Like this is how you
like I just feel better by like luring things down to go feed my demon, and then like I talk to it, but I stay back because I don't want it to eat me. Like, and I know it would, but I'm just like, oh, awesome.
I feel better now. Like I can go and do some more horrific things because at least I did that. Perfect. Love it. So the final tab is the look option. Now this is one more multiverse feature that obviously wouldn't be in the game. You could sketch out your character or something. If you guys want to take a look at that, I would suggest we're going to be playing really just Theater of the Mind. So it's have cool options, but for today's purposes, just pick something real quick and we can continue with the game. Oh, as well as your character's, I forgot. What is your character's name and alias? And they can be one and the same. Maybe you use your real name on the streets, but a lot of people probably don't want to burn their government name with all the deeds they're doing. So it's pretty customary to use an alias.
I don't know if it's her real name, but I like Veronica Darkheart.
Veronica Darkheart.
Maybe that's her real name. I don't know. And then maybe she goes by V. Gonna put that.
All right. And I know that this is the hard part. There's no skip option. If one more multiverse is watching, that would be my recommendation, is a skip option for this part.
So we just go through and create like a little avatar?
Yeah, just click some options. I promise it won't matter for today's purposes, although they are cool. And I do see the...
It did it for me.
Ultimately. Oh, okay. They like, implemented it already.
No,
that's how good they are.
It just kind of... No, now it's going back to this. Never mind. Hold on. There we go. Next. Let's see. Okay, I guess it worked. I don't know. It worked. I see. Where's my full name? Oh yeah, I'm Cross Bowden, which it auto-generated name for me, and I love it. Cross Bowden.
It auto-generated for you? It didn't auto-generate it for me?
It had a button to randomly generate a name.
Oh, I
went with Stump as my nickname, so I did make up my nickname as Stump. But
that's great.
Perfect. Okay, so we have Stump and V. That's who you guys are as individuals. So the last thing we need to prepare before we start is the crew. As you'll be becoming more skilled and building up more of a reputation, that's great, but there's safety in numbers. It's good to have some people you can trust. So collectively, you guys will make the crew, the gang, so to speak. If you see on the little pink crew thing, there should be create crew sheet. If you click that, let me know if you don't see what I'm talking about. Upper right-hand corner.
Paul, you want to do it?
Upper right-hand corner. Welcome to crew creation. Oops, where did it go?
Yep.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. Okay.
And what happens if you click it, Jason? Just curious.
Like once
spectate?
Paula clicks it, I see the thing. So I'm now
Oh,
looking at
okay.
the crew.
Perfect. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is, what kind of crew are you generally? This doesn't mean this is all you do, but if someone's going to hire you for your job, or what kind of industry are you in? And your options are assassins, pretty self-explanatory, bravos, who are your mercenary thugs. Think about gangs that run racketeering or shakedown protection money type things. Cults are acolytes of forgotten god, maybe a demon, maybe something spooky. Hawkers are your vice dealers, dealing in contraband of some kind, selling it. Smugglers are the ones that transport that contraband, and shadows are thieves and spies who probably stole that contraband to begin with. So it's the circle of life in Duskfall here. Where in that chain would you guys like to be?
I love the idea of either being a shadow or an assassin. Those are my two top picks.
Yeah, I only saw shadows as an option, but I like them both. Yeah, they're great.
Let's do shadows then. It sounds perfect for our particular set of skills.
That's what it's all about. So your reputation is the next option. What are you guys known for? If someone is going to hire you for something and they need something stolen or something where nobody's going to catch any trace of who did it, they know to go to you. But why did they go to you in particular? You're not the only scoundrels. So what's your reputation? Your options are ambitious, brutal, daring, honorable, professional, savvy, subtle, and strange.
I like immediately standing out to me are daring or maybe savvy or strange. I don't know.
I love it. I thought professional or subtle or ambitious.
Oh.
So I think it's great. I think you call it. Those all sound great.
Professional? I mean, we could be very professional, but I think in my mind, I'm not that professional yet.
I like daring. Yeah, I
Okay.
love daring. Let's
do
a great
daring.
call.
I feel like we're daring.
Yeah.
All
I love
right.
it.
So next is, where is your lair? And this is where the city has its different districts. There's a number of them, and again, strongly encourage you, if this interests you, to read the source book. Kind of in the interest of time, why don't you describe where in a city like this that you would picture your lair? And I can give you some general options if it would be in more of a high-end place. If it's in a seedy dive bar, is it by the docks? Is it near a marketplace? Sort of generally, where in the city would you like to be? And I can kind of help be a real estate agent and find you a locale for your lair here.
Nice.
What do you think, Jason?
I think if we have a crew, I think it really depends, like, how do we get together, right? And how do we know each other, right? Because you're noble, you're a spy, but we're a daring crew, so you're probably like met, Stump doing something sketchy.
Totally.
So maybe
Oh,
we
yeah.
stick to sketchy.
Yeah, I feel like I'm of noble background, but like I'm probably not living in high society at the
Yeah.
moment. So
Yeah, so you're slumming.
yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
So then we're slumming. So I
Yeah.
like that. Maybe docks.
Where
Is
would
the
be
docks the slummiest part of the city?
There's a lot of slummy parts of the
Nice.
city.
Okay, good,
There's
good.
definitely a large disparity of wealth. So there's also very nice places with your sprawling manors, and then there's spots where it's just house on top of house on top of house, people living under the canals. The docks, I would say, is not wouldn't be the slummiest part, in that everybody there has, some folks at least have access to pretty good paying jobs. The docks really are the economic center in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean that there's not poor laborers, but as a district, probably not. If you want something that's more slums in that it's overrun by gangs and criminal activity, Crowsfoot is certainly the rough and tumble part. Make sure that you don't go there alone type of area. Lots of, not necessarily everybody there is poor, but it definitely, a lot of people there are poor and will fight you for every dollar they can get. There's also Coleridge, is the old train lines before they have these fancy electroplasm trains. It's a rundown district in that the regular trains don't run anymore. They
Oh,
can't.
I like that.
So it's definitely abandoned boxcars around. If maybe that would be a
Yes.
good lair. So
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right. So you guys are, we'll say, an abandoned boxcar in Coleridge. So that's where your lair is. Next, you have to pick your grounds. This is where you do your jobs. Some people don't shit where they eat. Others might. But where would you feel most comfortable knocking somebody off or stealing from somebody? Or this is the place where you really feel like you can accomplish any job you'd be hired for. Whether that's familiarity from just, oh, I always rob from the super rich people, I figured out the holes in standard security protocols. Or maybe it's, well, I grew up in Crowsfoot and I got in a lot of fights there, or that's where my drinking hole is, so I spend a lot of time there. I know the lay of the land. But where would you folks feel most comfortable doing most of your jobs, or the kind of folks you would feel at home doing what you do?
I kind of like the night market.
I love the night market. That was
Okay.
my first thought. I was like, oh, I hope we go to night
Busy,
market.
like atmosphere, like lots of stuff going on. I like the underground clubs. It's kind of cool. So
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then I, as the GM, choose a faction that's running the joint right now, and might want to cut if you're going to be working on their turf and they find out that you're making money on the side. And I will select the Hive, and that's a guild of merchants who secretly trade in contraband, named for this symbol, a golden bee. So doesn't mean that you're on their radar right now. You're small fries, small potatoes. The Hive has way bigger things to worry about, but you're going to be working on their turf from time to time. So you have an option. You can pay them off. It'll get rid of half your starting money. You start with 2 coin. We'll get into that, but you'll lose half of that. You'll lose a coin, and they'll give you room to work. You pay your dues. Don't hit anybody that's going to matter to us, but we'll generally look the other way. We don't care. You can show respect, which will reduce your faction. Like, your street cred would be lower because you're sucking up to these big boys. You're sucking up to the big time, but they'll like you more. They'll give you a little bit of extra status with them, but everybody else is going to see you as a little bit weaker because you're not really a gang. You're just the Hive's little underlings. You don't really count. You're not big fish. Or ignore them. You keep your starting money. You lose no reputation on the streets, but -1 status. Doesn't mean that they hate you, but when they're not happy about people who aren't paying respect or money operating on their turf. Which of those options sounds most appealing to you?
either one, like either pay them or ignore them. I feel like definitely not sucking up to him. No way. What do you think, Jason? Should we ignore them? Should ignore them? Okay.
Yeah, fuck those motherfuckers, man.
So to
Let's
clarify,
go steal their. Let's go steal their stuff.
I did misspeak a little bit. So you wouldn't necessarily lose reputation with other gangs, but you do lose both of your starting coin.
Yeah.
So you pay them all of your money. That's the way it works. I apologize, but for show respect, it's you pay all of your money, and yeah. So
no way. Merchants.
Which option?
No.
So which option?
We're ignoring them.
Ignoring them. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I love this.
So, what is your special ability? This is something that, just as you got to choose something for your playbook, this is something that is your collective playbook. Your crew sheet gets a little bit of a bonus. So there's some options there that you'll see in the abilities tab. And you might have some questions like, for example, what's an engagement roll? Second Story says that you get a +1 to your engagement roll. That's going to be, how do we start a score? What's the first obstacle? How prepared are you for the first thing you run into in any score? Some of the options might allow you to increase your rating and certain skills to higher than you would normally be allowed to. Some are have to do with your tier. Your tier is how big are you in the world. So like goes up to, I think 5 or 6 would be like the max. You guys start out at tier 0. I think you just formed. So things that increase your tier or make it easier to increase your tier means that you're a fast growing gang or a crew that you quickly rise the ranks. So there's some options there. I don't know which ones you folks are leaning towards.
I like Second Story. I think that's pretty good. I like Everyone Steals. And I liked Synchronized.
What do you think about Slippery? To go with Daring.
Slippery. When you roll entanglements, roll twice and keep the one. What is entanglement again?
I don't know, but I just want to before we learn what it is, I want to make a case for this. So before understanding, let me speak with confidence on the subject. So I just like the combination of being daring and being slippery. So I don't know what slippery means, but it sounds cool.
That was a very convincing argument.
Thank you.
I don't even think I need to explain
I'm
anymore
convinced.
because yeah. But entanglements, just for folks in the chat who might be a little bit less convinced, entanglement rolls are during your downtime after you have settled your score, you made away with the loot, you guys are going to have some enemies in your wake. You made somebody mad. Maybe that's a rival gang. Maybe that's the Blue Coats. Maybe it's something even bigger than that. But complications that come with your day-to-day occupations are entanglement rolls. And that's a special thing that happens during downtime. And depending on how much heat you have, which is how much attention you have from law enforcement, depends on who's most likely to show up at your door. And so you want to reduce heat during downtime, as well as roll well on entanglement rolls.
It makes sense because we're not paying any money or showing any respect to this other gang. So it makes sense that we would need to be slippery, especially since we're extra daring. So I think it's good. I think it's a good idea.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah. And I think it makes sense that you guys you don't get caught. Like that's the best way, is just to not have it tie back to you, or at least plausible deniability, at the very least. So next is upgrades. So these are things that, and again, in the upgrades and abilities, the things you don't choose now, they're not locked off forever. As you accumulate experience points, you'll be able to unlock the other abilities you didn't choose. Perhaps you can set up another layer somewhere. So these aren't things that you're stuck with forever. These are your starting points, but these things will be available to you. So your upgrades are the ones at the top there are going to be shadow upgrades. Those are things that are specific to being shadows and will help you do shadowy things. The other ones are available to all crews, regardless of what playbook you're choosing. And they're more general things that help you have more security, help you have a workshop at your lair to build things, having a way to train, having other better equipment, things like that. So you can choose one of these. And I know there's a lot of options again, but generally speaking, what kind of thing would you rather be better at?
So we choose one from this long list.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2.
2. Okay.
I really like underground maps and passkeys. Just
I
right at
like
the
that
gate.
too.
Yes.
Hidden lair might also be good because
Yes.
we could, because we're like slippery, and also I don't know, hidden lair and maps and passkeys could be good.
Yeah, it feels like, again, right? Operating more off vibes than on mechanical advantage, but I love the idea that we're like brave and sneaky, and we're really good at going through like secret ways, and like even if we get busted, like we're really good at like ducking out, right? It's all feeling very cool.
I feel like the game is more about vibes, maybe, than
Absolutely.
so I think we're on the right track.
Absolutely.
I've always preferred cool to good,
Totally.
We're playing the right game. That's
Excellent.
it.
I'm glad you're on my
can't
crew,
min-max.
Jason.
Awesome.
So
All right,
looks
cool.
like you have selected hidden lair. You have prowess training. Is that supposed to be selected?
Now, hidden lair and underground maps and passkeys.
I apologize. You have 4 starting options. It's supposed to be 2 and 2, but I apologize. It's 4 options. So
That's
you have
amazing.
hidden lair, you have underground maps and passkeys, and I believe you have 2 more.
Wow. This is tough now.
Decisions.
Oh man. Implements quality. Each upgrade improves the quality of all the PC's items of this type beyond the quality established. I don't know. Implements,
so
maybe there's
here
a
will
thing I
be
missed.
like how good your stuff is determined by how big of a gang you are, how big your crew is, like not in terms of number of members, but just the quality that's going on with your crew. And that's your tier. How big of a force are you in the city? As you upgrade your tier, your tools of the trade become a little bit better. So with the gear quality upgrade, it means that you're punching a little bit above your weight in terms of what you have access to. So if you're going up against the finest locks in the city councilman's house, who's probably a higher tier because he has money, he has good locks, you might have a very limited effect with your tier 0 lock picks trying to pick the lock. This would give you up to a tier 1. So you have a little bit better equipment, hoping for better results from that.
What about this thief rigging? 2 free load worth of tool or gear items.
That's a great question. So in the aspect of gear, because we're doing flashbacks and time is a myth or something like that, we don't decide what items we're bringing with us, mostly because I'm not a competent scoundrel. I don't know what tools would be needed on the job, but our characters are. So they have what they need. At the start of each score, you're going to pick your load number, your loadout number. That's how many items you're carrying, not what are those items. We don't carry yet. We'll see them when we see them, if we see them. So with the thief rigging, by getting 2 free load, it means that you can have 2 extra items, or some bigger items cost 2 to begin with, but you can have more stuff with you. Again, we'll decide what that stuff is as we play, and as you pull something out of your bag, or maybe have a flashback to where you stashed it somewhere. When we see it on screen, we'll decide what those items are. But this just means that no matter what you pick, or how many objects you want to start out with, how many items you want to start out with, you'll have 2 extra spaces. And the fewer objects you pick, the easier it is to be sneaky. So you'll pick like a light load, a medium load, or a heavy load, depending on how many items you want to have. But the more items you have, the more complications that come with that. So this will give you 2 free objects without pushing up to that next level.
I like that. And I remember the last time I played this, my character got stressed and like had to check out. So the steady option is also interesting to me.
It costs 3 upgrades though, so we'd have to like we could take steady. Like if we had steady, we'd take only 2 things total.
What? Okay.
Yeah, it's apparently very valuable.
Stress is the
That's-
name of the game. So
It's pretty, yeah. Okay, well then let's maybe skip that for now.
What about a quality thing? So we have documents, gear, implements, supplies, tools, or weapons. So we could do like we have really good tools. What's gear? So what does gear mean in this context?
So gear in this context would be the items that fill up those slots, those loadout slots. So gear is just the stuff that you're bringing with you, your items. It can be thieves' tools, weapons, armor, forged documents, rope.
So gear is like the what's the difference between like gear quality and choosing something like tool quality?
Yeah, that's really my big question.
Right. So there's 2 different ways. The quality of your gear is defined in 2 ways. One is what tier is it? Kind of that's how good it's going to be generally. But depending on different playbooks that you choose to start out with, you might have access to fine quality item, whether that's a lock picking set or whatever it might be. So when we're considering how effective something's going to be, you might have a very good version of it. So it's probably not a low tier. So they play together based on what do I have access to generally, plus what is my particular items that I'm bringing to the table. This wasn't something I got for this job. I always carry my fine gun.
It wasn't from, yeah, okay, got it.
Right. So tier, the easiest way to think about it is tier would be like general gear, but you as a person, as a player, your character has access to good stuff in certain fields. So that's the fine items for gear.
I kind of like good gear.
Sure.
Or good tools or good weapons. But I think good gear sounds cool.
Gear is good.
Yeah, it seems very generic.
Yeah, so it's like different than like documents or something like that, where that's not gear, that's documents. But gear is more your tools of the trade, your lockpicks and stuff like that. It says that the GM chooses I like to do this as a group. So who are the people that were impacted? One faction who helped you upgrade and one faction who was screwed over. And I know that there's a lot of factions, you might not know who they are, but maybe tell me some general ideas. So first we got to look at your upgrades. You got your thief rigging, your underground maps and passkeys, your hidden lair, and your gear quality. What kind of general folks, gangs, government organizations, that sort of thing, would you say helped you get one or all of those things or some of those things? And who did you maybe have to step on some toes?
I feel like we could be helped by some people that Stump over here knows. And maybe we would step on the toes of...
Let it be the
some,
blue
like-
coats. Like,
Yeah, I was going to say some...
let's totally
yeah,
go
I
after
think
the
we're
cops.
stacking up the blue coat hate. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I will say that who helped you, we'll say it was some people at the docks, and they had some underground maps and passkeys, and it was somebody at the docks, dock workers. They have, some pretty good resources there. Stump, you not necessarily best friends with them, but they helped you out. And would you like they like you, so you get 1 status with them, Or would you like to repay that kindness? You lose 1 coin, but you get 2 status with them instead. So how much money changed hands and how much do they like you is the question that you're asking here. No
Yeah,
matter what you get.
I think we always pay our debts, right? Like to people that help us anyway.
We don't bribe people, but we do help people that are on our side already.
Yeah.
So it's either no, you don't spend any coin and you get +1 with them, or you spend 1 coin, you get +2 with them.
Let's spend a coin.
You have friends at the docks.
Yeah.
They like you. Now the blue coats.
No, not giving any money to them.
Yeah, you screwed them over, so you can either ignore them. They
yeah.
don't like you, -2 status, or you can spend 1 and you get -1 status. But I think we ignore them is the correct answer there.
Yeah, yeah.
So cops already got all they're gonna get at me.
And then the last bit of this is who's your contact? This isn't necessarily one of your friends as individuals, but where do you go for work, for information, something like that? Who's your contact as a group that you go to? It can be, and you have some options here, just as you did with your friends, and they're very ill-defined intentionally.
What do you think, B? I feel like you probably set us up with the contact.
It could totally be a noble, or the other thing I was thinking it could be like a tavern owner, but I already have a friend who's a tavern owner.
A collector?
What does the collector even do though? Like what do they?
Somebody that like collects weird stuff. So like a rich person that like is like gathering things for some like weird reason. That's what I like. That's what I like to think of it. But a noble is just as good.
I don't know. Like, what is it that we're good at doing? I guess we're good at stealing stuff.
And you're daring, right?
We're really daring.
People know that you have a reputation for being daring. So which one of these people would associate with some slippery, daring?
A collector who doesn't really care where the stuff comes from or what risks are required to procure said items.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense to me. And I mean, your guys' place that your hunting grounds is night market. You guys are used to stealing from markets, from stores, those sorts of things. Like that's where you're at home. So having a collector makes a lot of sense. They probably send you there often, or at least they're going to start once you do this job.
I like it. Good. Can they be like really creepy, like really off-putting?
Of course.
Lean into the creepy vibes.
So then it's one. I need to choose 2 factions. We'll say that this person is friendly with the hive because they maybe that's how you got your hunting ground there. I mean, you didn't appease the hive, but you know they're there, and this person, she wants to make sure her standing stays good. So she's going to be friendly with the hive. And just because we have a streak going, she's going to be unfriendly with the blue coats. I'm sure she doesn't like.
Wait. Yeah. Could she be unfriendly with the feds?
Who are the feds?
Higher up?
Yeah, that's even the inspectors.
That's why.
So she's like, she's like high level, like we're low level criminals.
Yeah.
Right. She's into that big crime.
Yeah, so exactly. The blue coats don't bother her too much because she has money, she has connections, and the stuff that they're dealing with, they don't even really know why that's illegal or know like the code well enough to know you're not allowed to import that rare mineral or whatever. But the inspectors know, and so she's on their list, and you don't want to be on their list. So now, what do you call this act? What's your name of your crew? And there is a little randomized button if you want to play with that or name it yourself.
Let's see. How about the Dusk Walkers?
I love it. I was going with the Salt Dog, so
Oh,
I think
that's cool too.
Duskwalkers is so much better. No, the Duskwalkers is so much better, like way cooler. I'm gonna
Okay.
keep Salt Dogs for a later project. We'll see them
Keep it.
Yeah.
see them in Best Left Buried.
All
Hi, we're Salt Dogs.
right. So Duskwalkers.
Oh, that's very good.
I think it goes with our
Alright.
theme.
All right. So you have created your scoundrels. You've created your crew. And how are we on time?
We have about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's go ahead and we got to see them, right? I mean, we just spent all this time. Let's put them into action. So, and get to see how the game works. So we'll go ahead and just skip through the free play part, and I'll give you a starting scenario. Fitz, the collector, has contacted the Duskwalkers. She left her calling card in the signature location that you folks knew where to look for, and it's not too unusual when V and her rough and tumble bodyguard maybe makes their way through the more upper crusts of society towards Fitz's manor. And you enter and you see her, and she's an older woman. Her hair is a little scraggly, looks pretty dry, and she has lanterns lighting up the room rather than candles because she can afford the finer things. And it's pretty apparent that this is V. You're probably more used to situations like this. Stump, this is stuff that you've heard about, but maybe you haven't even seen like this much technology and this much luxury in one place. She's hunched over some books and has her lantern as she's just holding the lantern on the table. Just can't let go of it, as if she just sat down and was stuck, and flips through and says, "You got my message?" Not even turning around to acknowledge that you walked in the front door.
Yes, we did. We're
Come,
here.
come closer. Come closer. And she's just beckoning, still back towards you.
Walk in a little bit closer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her den is, or her desk area, her office is just filled with the craziest artwork. It's the frames look very, very expensive, made of gold and fine ore. The paintings themselves look very abstract, just kind of colors, blends, and lots of old books, not on shelves, just littered around the room. And she's combing through a book on her desk and says, "I need something. I need you to get me something. I have a job. You said you wanted to take this seriously, right? You're putting a crew together, V?"
Yes, we are here to do your bidding.
Perfect. Exactly what I like to hear. Now, I could just hire some street thug if I needed somebody mugged. I need something gone, and I need to make sure nobody knows it's gone until I am out of town. I actually have myself booked the next train to leave tomorrow. So I need this done tonight. I've been putting this together for quite some time, but it has to be tonight, and nobody can know it's taken until after I am gone and it's in my hands. Do you understand?
Completely.
Yes,
We are
ma'am.
nothing if not discreet.
Now, Lord Densford is having a masquerade gala this evening. As you may have heard in the news, his son recently came back from a very successful trip. His son is Captain Densford, of course, of the Leviathan Hunter. His fleet recently came back after being gone only 3 weeks, and they say that they have lost not a single soul aboard, and Lord Densford is throwing a masquerade gala for them this evening. I need you to get me as many jewels as you can from all the fancy folk that are going to be attending. The rarer the better, but there's one I need in particular. It's called the cat's pupil. It's a gem, about yay big. She holds up her hand. Rather large and very, very dense. It's pure black, dark, dark. Now, anything else you get, I'll make sure you get paid for. But that's why I'm sending you folks in there. Now, like I said, it has to be tonight. There's going to be people crawling all over the place, but they're wearing masks. I suppose you should probably dress appropriately or make sure that you don't get spotted. Because again, if anybody is following you when you return, not only will there be no payment, but I'll make sure that you're locked up in Iron Hook prison before you folks even get started on this little escapade you endeavor you plan to embark on. Is everything understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do believe we can help you with that.
Now, before you leave, do you have any questions?
I don't think so. I'm quite capable of infiltrating a party like this. So, Stump, is it?
Any idea where she keeps the jewel, or where he keeps the jewel?
No, they do like to show it off, especially for big occasions. There's always the braggarts in that family. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has it close by or on display somewhere, but I'm not sure where it's normally kept. He surely has some vaults in there, but that's what I'm paying you folks for, and you will be paid well, I assure you.
You don't happen to have a replica or anything, do you?
She springs up from her desk and just starts pushing books all around her desk. Finally, she finds one with this dark leather cover and just starts flipping through it furiously, and then holds up in front of her, and it's literally just a black oval that you see on the page, and she just says, "This is the cat's pupil. You understand?"
Yeah, jewel and it's black. I got it.
That's the one. All right, so
What was the name of the person again?
Lord Densford.
Densford.
And his son is Captain Densford. His wife, Lady Densford.
It's the sort of thing that you'll see him like wearing, like on a necklace.
Very
or something.
dense. I'm not sure it would make great jewelry, but as I said, he's always trying to flaunt his wealth, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's has it literally strapped around his neck. But I wouldn't expect it to be there.
Sorry if you already said this, but after we procure the items, is there a drop point? Should we come back here?
Well, certainly do not come back here. As I said, I'm leaving. You will use the normal drop point. In fact, let's use the one close to the third boxcar to the left, not the one that you folks like to hang out in, but the 3 down from that one. Let's if there's any heat, bring them to your backyard, not mine.
Of course, of course.
All right. So, and again, this game is very writer's room, as I like to describe it. So we're going to set up what we're going to do next, but generally speaking, that would normally be dragged out a little bit more, but in the interest of time, I just wanted to give you guys a job. But generally speaking, we're going to say that you folks have access to whatever you would need access to. You guys are competent. You guys have access to tools, documents, and we'll get to that. So we're going to be moving from the free play phase to the score. So in our little drop-down menu, I hit score. And for the setup, you have to choose. We're not going to spend a lot of time planning because you folks have already done that. That's not the fun part. We're going to see the plan come into action. And if you wanted to have done something before that you said, oh, I would have planned for that. Well, you did. And we'll flash back and we'll see that part of the plan forming. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on what if we did this or that. We're just going to start in the action. And if we need to go backwards or forwards in time, we'll adjust accordingly. But we do want to know, just generally speaking, what kind of job this is. And they do give some approaches to start out. The options are assault, deception, stealth, occult, social, or transport. So without defining sort of the nitty gritty of what if we do this and this will be our backup or something like that, if you had to pick one of those words to say how you wanted to approach this, what would that word be? And you can obviously discuss it a little bit.
I mean, I feel like the two obvious ones are either deception or stealth. I feel like it's a big party and we have to steal gems maybe from party goers. So yeah, I don't know. Deception, we could go in. It's a masquerade already. So yeah, I don't know what you think, Jason, but that's what sprung to mind.
I agree that deception is a pretty good one. I was thinking stealth just on account of like our maps and stuff. Like we sneak in and we try and like avoid the heat while the thing is on. But I do also really love deception and going in as masquerade.
I think we're gonna need both in either case. We're gonna need to use both in either
Yeah.
case. I guess it's just a matter of which one like is the setup. Like we could just walk in the front door, or we could tunnel in. Like
We could
That's just
we could
it, is
sneak
that-
in and oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that this isn't, maybe I described it wrong, but yeah, this is the setup. This is kind of the first time the camera, so to speak, if this were a movie, the first time the camera pans in on the crew in this job, what kind of thing are they engaging in? But obviously that might change and you guys might have to murder everybody in the party and do it that way, right? We don't know, and it might end up being an assault or a cult. Maybe you summon a demon to deal with it. But first starting out, what is your first approach, I guess, is the best way to describe the setup.
okay, I say if we can, we get in there sneakily and we're dressed and ready for the masquerade, but we try to.
Well, yeah, you're dressed and ready for the masquerade, and I'm like sneaky all the way. You know.
You're not even gonna be wearing a mask.
Well, I'm happy to, but it's more like I was thinking that like we'd sneak
Okay.
in and then like you'd go and like mingle and I'd be like the on the side, you know, infiltratey person. But you tell
Sure.
me. I'm happy to bring a mask, like to be clear.
Well, I just think to be
I just don't clean
prepared.
up that good, you know.
You don't, but
I don't
this is the
mingle with
perfect
that.
opportunity to just wear a costume and cover yourself just in case you're spotted, you know.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right. Okay. But you can stay hidden just in case you're spotted.
Okay, so that is the deception option. Now you'll see.
Wait, no, not the deception option.
Stealth.
The stealth, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, but we're
Stealth.
keeping disguises with us.
Yes,
Okay.
we're gonna do both, but we're gonna start with stealthing in.
All right, perfect. So next you'll choose not your individual items, but how big of a loadout do you guys want? How many items do you want to carry? And remember, you're going to get a couple of those for free. But really what you're deciding is light, medium, or heavy. Where it might come into play is if you're trying to be sneaky, if you have a heavier loadout, then it's going to be bulkier, clumsier, noisier, something like that. Doesn't mean that you can't choose it, but that's the decision that you're making. Do I want to have more options of gear, or do I want to just have less items so I'm sneakier, I guess?
I don't think we need a lot of gear for this
Yeah,
job.
light, go light.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something you choose individually. So you could have one person medium, one person light, but that's 100% up to you.
What's a shadow clone?
Do I have to make this selection somewhere?
Yes, so you'll both make the selection. And Jason, don't click the items yet because we don't know what items you're bringing.
Oh, got it.
Where do I
So you're
see
just,
this? Sorry.
oh, no problem. It's the upper left-hand corner under score.
So
Or
if-
actually,
If you open your sheet, or if you look at your character, it's got bio, play, inventory, and progression.
Open sheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it should start on your inventory.
Okay.
so you're selecting
Light.
light. Okay, both of you are light. All right. And now is the engagement roll. And that is, what's the first, how great are things going when we first zoom that camera in on you folks? You start out with, and again, like every other roll in Blades of the Dark, it's really how many d6 do I get to roll to decide what happens next. So we're going to start out with 1 d6 in our pool just for sheer dumb luck. You wouldn't be there if you guys didn't have something going for you. So you got something going for you. You start with 1. And then I get to add or subtract dice from that based on factors. You get +1 because your operation is particularly bold and daring. You guys are small potatoes and you're trying to knock off a really big party with some influential people. You will also get +1 because V is familiar with nobility and is used to that sort of space. Then there's disadvantages. I'm going to take 1 away because of the area that you're in. It's not something that Stump is good at. So in all the ways that V is prepared, Stump is not prepared for that same exact thing. So I think those two things sort of balance out. But that's the kind of discussion that you'd have. And there's factors to consider in the little list here. But generally speaking, I'm going to give you 2 dice to start out with. And you guys got a 3. Normally I'd pick one of you, but just in the interest of time, when you roll dice, and in this case you rolled 2 dice and they both got a 3. 1, 2, and 3 is generally bad. You fail. 4 and 5 is a partial success. A 6 is a great success, a very good success. And if you roll multiple 6s, you get a critical success. But 1, 2, and 3 is bad. This means that you start out in a desperate position. So things are not going great for the Duskwalkers as you approach the party and you recognize that there is a number of guards stationed in makeshift watchtowers that they invented around the fence, that the security is much, much higher than you would expect, even being familiar with the security at noble parties. They went above and beyond. And they got these electroplasm spotlights that they're kind of just moving around the party. Some of the nobles seem to enjoy it, thinking of it like, spotlight, I'm in the spotlight. But for scoundrels such as yourself who are trying to be sneaky, not something that you want just kind of searching the perimeter for your presence. So you're in a desperate starting position. There's guards around. There are some nobles that are going through the front gates, all of which are wearing these very elaborate masks, feathers, furs. I mean, people are going all out dressed to the nines. Animals you can't even identify are now wardrobe for these folks. The other thing you notice is that each and every one of them is presenting a piece of paper to the very bulky but well-dressed folks that are manning the front of this gate and are presumably seeing some sort of invitation, not something else you would expect. Most of the time, everybody knows everybody and people know if they're invited to these things or not. So caught you off guard, V, that there have actual paper invitations going on. How would you like to, what is your objective? What is your goal in this scenario here? And how would, generally speaking, you want to go about it?
It looks like we'll have to use our underground maps, perhaps, to find another way to get into this building.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Is there some sort of, I hate to even say it, but perhaps a sewer system beneath this particular building?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we saw you guys try to find a sewer system. So yeah, you look around and there's a manhole cover that leads down into some sort. Now the water in this world is already this black inky sludge, whether that's from the demons, giants that are swimming around in it or whatnot. But this is a thicker kind of sludge going on down here. It smells terrible, hard to breathe. Maybe there's even some like a little bit of glow from some mushrooms growing that are just kind of emitting a little bit of light in there. But there is a sewer system. Now the issue is that it might be, you have your maps, so navigating it isn't a problem, but it's not going to necessarily lead you to the heart of the party. It's going to lead you to some dumping ground that they likely have out back, but it's up to you if you want to explore that route.
Would it potentially get us into the manor?
It would at least get you onto the grounds.
Well, this is certainly an option, but we might not be very presentable after we traverse this foul tunnel.
I look at there's still a lot of people coming in.
Yeah, you're a little bit back because again, there's these spotlights and all that are closer to the actual perimeter. But you are dressed somewhat appropriately so no one's giving you any looks or anything like that because you're far enough back and not dressed in your streetwear.
Yeah.
But there's a manhole cover that's a little bit away. You'd still have to navigate down there, but it's not too far from where the party is and the manor is.
What do you think, Stumpy? Can you lead the way?
Thinks I could, but maybe I could snatch a couple invitations off some of these folks.
Could you? That
You'd
would
like
be
that?
much better. I would greatly prefer that.
So there's like a line?
Yeah, there's folks congregating, a little bit of a line, probably about 3 people deep at any given time, but it's more groups congregating around as they sort of just are already mingling and chatting before they approach the line and actually enter the party proper.
Excellent. I'd like to go near one of the groups congregating, especially if it's not like in the super well lit area, and just like stumble as I go in. Like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's dark is something you can find everywhere. Street lights are pretty much the only light. It's I would say it's nighttime, but that's because it's always nighttime. The sun exploded. So it's pitch black like it always is, just lit up by the street lights.
I would like to assist while Stumpy is doing this. If I see what's going on or we've coordinated beforehand, maybe we have this thing worked out where like I'm the distraction and Stumpy can be the, the stealthy. So as Stumpy's stumbling, I will go up. I'll just start walking towards someone. Bunty, is that you, darling? I haven't seen you since university. How are you?
Well, I didn't know you would be here. And you can tell that this woman is trying to, you're wearing a mask. So she's playing up the social politeness of trying to recognize you, but you can tell that she's struggling, and suddenly something seems like it clicks and she says, "Now, where's your daughter?"
Oh, my darling. She's unfortunately away right now, but you know, you know how the kids are these days.
Where where would you send her?
Oh,
Have you no soul?
oh, she's just having fun with some of her friends. You know how kids are.
But her legs. Did you sent her away, didn't you? You thought she was a
No.
scorn on your family. You can
Oh,
tell that she's starting to get a little bit more animated. So you're going to have to come up with some way to try to stop her from creating a scene. That's the risk right now if things go poorly. The obstacle is that she is uh, trying to create a scene, and your goal is to calm her down to. Although I will say this is not a bad distraction. She is certainly distracted, but we're going to lock you in for right now and see how well this goes, and that'll determine. But we're going to have you're on deck, Jason, for a roll. So start thinking about how you want to do this. But we'll describe our first action roll. So you have your character sheet with all your little skills on it. You tell me how you want to go about this, keeping your skill set in mind.
I'm gonna use sway to charm, etc. And I'll just say I'll lower my voice a little bit and kind of lean in and say, "Darling, I didn't want to say anything, but she's seeing the doctors right now. It's kind of hush hush, and it's a very experimental. It's not well known, so I'm not supposed to spread it around."
Okay, I like that a lot. So you're going to start out with 2 dice to roll just because that's your skill. You have 2 points in that. You can get a bonus die, and that can be through pushing yourself, which is taking 2 stress. And it just means that you put all your oomph behind it. You can describe how that stresses you out, or how you get that extra oomph to push yourself. Or you can accept a devil's bargain. And a devil's bargain is something I make up, and you can take it or leave it. You don't have to accept a devil's bargain. If you accept it, you get 1 bonus die, but no matter what result you get, whether you do a critical success or you fail completely, that devil's bargain happens. Devil's bargain can be something bad, like you break your lockpick, and maybe whether you succeed or lose, your lockpick is now broken if you accept this devil's bargain, but you get an extra die on this roll. My favorites are the ones that screw with the story a little bit. So turns out that this person is falls madly in love with you and is now a secret admirer. Or it turns out that your cousin shows up and is making an embarrassment out of you, and we get to see how that unfolds. It doesn't have to happen. It's only if you want that extra dice, but something to screw with the story in exchange, add another wrinkle, I should say, not mess it up, but just add another wrinkle to it in exchange for a die. And they don't just have to come from me. If you have a fun idea to add to the story, say, hey, could I have a devil's bargain where this happens? And if so, I'll take that and I'll get the extra die for it. So, or if Jason had a fun one for Paula, it's very writer's room feel for that. So the first question you have to ask is, do you want to push yourself or a devil's bargain?
I don't want to push myself, but a devil's bargain sounds super fun. So
Yeah. What if this
The
lady like?
devil's
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go for it. I like
I
when
was gonna
players
say, what
go
if
for it
this
a
lady
lot.
like, because she's like high society, she's like really, really like annoying and really gossipy because you already kind of get that feel. But like if you like one of the things that happens here is you have to like arrange to go like you have to arrange to go spend like time with her and like gossip and like get deeper into uh, her world like as part of convincing her. Is that
Yeah,
am I
I
in the
think
right
to
vein?
build on that, yes. So to build on that, we'll say that you have to, in trying to persuade her to stay quiet and that this is hush hush, she's going to demand that you join her book club. Now, this book club, it's not something you can accept and just blow off and say, haha, she doesn't even know who I am. She takes this stuff seriously, and she keeps some sort of special contract. It's called a ghost contract, where you shake on it, and each of you is bound. If you don't follow through with it, you get a terrible curse and you have a lot of handicaps. But in exchange for that, you also get a small tattoo. It's just a little dot on your wrist, but you'll be permanently marked to where you have to show up for her book club every Tuesday.
I was gonna say, how often is it, and does it
Once a week.
conflict?
No, we'll say
Oh,
once a
man.
month. Once a
Okay.
month. We'll be more
'Cause
reasonable.
I don't know, like, as a professional criminal, how much time I'll actually have to
That's
spend
fair.
reading. Once a month on Tuesdays, is it like morning or is it evening?
It's hard to say because there's no sun, right? So
Oh, that's
time
fair.
is sort of a weird construct there. People typically operate on their own little shifts, 18-hour shifts often, but it's at a set time. There's still clocks, but the concept of morning, afternoon, and night is sort of old school thinking.
Okay. I just didn't want to have to wake up super early to go to book club, but
No, it'll be at a reasonable hour based on your sleep schedule, we'll say.
okay, I'll do it.
All right. So you don't have to take any stress, but you will get an extra die here. And then the last way to get an extra bonus die is with assistance. If your teammate assists you, they will take 1 stress in the act of trying to help, but it's less than the 2 stress you would have to pay to push yourself. But they take 1 stress and you get 1 extra die. That's not your call to make. That's Jason's call to make. And I think the way the narrative is set up, you're kind of already assisting in that you are another thing to take her attention away from causing a scene and that you're stumbling. So it's there in the narrative. The question is, do you want the extra stress of helping deflect from what's going on rather than have that be the sole distraction, right? Because V was going to be the distraction while you did your thing. Do you want to help distract for the distraction and take a stress?
Yeah, well, I'm on the other side, and I'm stumbling in and trying to like pickpocket and steal some invitations from people. So absolutely, I will take 1 stress as part of my little stumbly distraction.
Okay.
Now, do I just check one of these little things?
Yep.
Oh,
So on your there
got
should
it.
be, if you go to
I got it.
well, oh,
I got
okay.
an orange stress.
Perfect. Okay.
Am I rolling these dice?
So yep, on your character sheet, you can
Oh,
go ahead.
can I roll physical dice or?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yep.
I got these.
Oh,
So it's
some
4.
fancy dice, eh?
Some fancy
Absolutely.
dice that somebody sent me. So it's 4, right? You said 4.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You did all the things. And just tell me your highest. That's the only one I care about.
5.
5. So it's a partial success. She says, "No, I do understand the necessity of keeping things discreet. Now, perhaps you would feel more comfortable in a less populated environment. I do have this book club, and I've been meaning to invite you for quite some time. We just never run into each other. So if you promise to come, I can give you a copy of next month's novel we're reading, and perhaps we could talk about it there. And oh, actually, I believe I see a fellow member, and you see she beckons over. So your partial success is she didn't cause a scene, but she is beckoning at least one other person over. And while she just kind of does that, you see a figure in a mask, another woman approaching. But before she even gets there, she holds out her hand, and you see a little faint glow right at her fingertips, the light emanating through the white gloves on her hand. It says, "So I'll see you next Tuesday, right?"
Charmed. Yes, of course, my darling.
As you finish, you feel the tingle like leave her fingertips, go up and land at your wrist where it burns for just a second, and a black dot is there. And no sooner does she finish the ritual, her hand is released that she's sort of bumped into by some stumbling, stumpy fool. who
Nice.
also made her sort of forget what's going on. Now there is still this other person approaching, but let's zoom in on Stumps right now. What's your plan of attack here?
So as I get towards the crowd, I'm really just gonna stumble in, like literally like I tripped on a cobblestone or something, and I'm gonna like try and get people to catch me. And then as they're like helping me get back up, they're like, "Oh, sorry, governor, sorry," and pickpocket them at the same time.
All right. So which one of your actions would you
I'm
like to
thinking
use to pickpocket?
finesse.
Okay.
Is that right?
So it's completely up to
Oh,
you.
it's always
So as
flexible.
the player, you decide how you want to do that, keeping in mind the description of the skills. But one of the games I like to play with players that have been playing for a while is they'll say, I want to do this with finesse, let's say. I might say, how would you do it with rec? That's one of my favorite questions asked, because you can use any skill for any situation. Now the effect might not be as prosperous as if you used a more traditional skill, but you could use any skill to deal with any obstacle, and we'll decide what that looks like. But I think that just, in my experience, finesse or prowl would both be good. You could hunt by saying you've been watching which pocket she's been putting her invitation in. You could use that with survey, making a similar. So there's different options you can use, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I'd like to do finesse.
Okay, so go ahead and click the finesse. Oh, you have
Okay.
you have physical dice?
I do.
Okay, so we'll talk it through then. So the question is, do you want a devil's bargain or to push yourself in exchange for an extra die? Again, pushing yourself is 2 stress.
What would the devil's bargain be? Out of curiosity.
The devil's bargain is that the figure that was called over is actually it's an old landlord of yours, owned your tenant, but would probably be at least somewhat familiar with you if he heard you talk. But it's somebody that's familiar with you that's being called over would be the devil's bargain. Otherwise, it'll just be another noble stranger. It doesn't mean they would recognize you, just that they would be in the
Yeah.
vicinity. That's
I
it's not
love
an instant
I
fail.
love that. I need the old landlord there because if things go
Okay.
south,
I will help as well if I can. Take a stress, and when I see this going down, I'll just try to. I don't know if I've described what I'm doing, but just talk a
Yeah.
little bit extra loud, and if
Just
someone's
keep her
starting to turn,
focused.
I'll put a
Yeah.
hand on her back and.
So what we didn't do for the first roll, because I just wanted to get the dice pool mechanic, we're going to build on it. And so there's 2 things that you decide what skill you're going to roll. We collectively kind of decide, or really you and your team decide how many dice you're going to roll. I get to set what's called position and effect. So there's 3 options for each. Position is how comfortable am I in what's going on right now? And it can be I'm in a desperate position, I'm in a risky position, or I'm in a comfortable position. Essentially, I forget the exact word for that right now, but it's essentially if things go bad, how bad are they going to go? Because of how well things are going right now. And it's controlled, risky, and desperate are the 3 options. So controlled is the best. Risky is kind of most rolls are going to be risky, and desperate means that if things go bad, you're in serious trouble because you're already not doing so hot. Effect means if something goes right, if things go well, how good is this? So if you were to choose rec to pickpocket somebody, it probably had a very limited effect, right? It's probably not going to get you the kind of result that you would want, but it might do something. You blow out their pocket and now you have it, but it's probably a limited effect. Great effect is the best result. You have the right tools for the job. If things go well, they're going to go very well. And then standard is the middle option. So risky standard is what most rules are, but we can tweak those depending on what's going on in the narrative or the fiction, so we know what our outcomes are going to be. So this will be a risky standard roll. Nothing, there's some consequences if things go bad, but it doesn't mean that bad things are going to happen necessarily. So go ahead and roll and let me know what your highest die is.
My highest die is a 3.
A 3. Things do not go well. You do not
No.
succeed.
But you took the help that I was giving you, right?
That was with I had 2 3s and 2 2s.
Oh no, Jason.
Now, this does get us into one of the last mechanics that would need is resistance. At any point when a consequence happens, the player can say, no, I don't like that story. It would be way cooler if I just got to not have that happen. And you can, but it's stressful. It is stressful to resist. So depending on what the consequence would be, in this case, some sort of social consequence, most likely, you would roll. If you see on your character sheet, you have sort of the bigger, different text words. So insight, prowess, and resolve are the 3, and those are your resistance dice. You know how many you have because it's if you have at least 1 point in each of the 4 skills listed under that. So, for example, Jason, you have 1 point in hunt, but no points in study, survey, and tinker. So you would have 1 dice to roll for insight because you have 1 point in one of those skills. So the first column is essentially of each one is how many dice you would roll. To resist, you either get no consequence or maybe a reduced consequence depending on how the GM is feeling or how bad it would be. And you take 6 stress minus the result of your resistance roll. You don't have to resist. You can always choose to just take your comeuppance. But if you want things to go differently, you can always roll a resistance roll. If you crit on a resistance roll, it was so scary that the fact you made it out without the consequence makes you feel better and you reduce stress. So
I'd get to roll 3 prowess dice.
So that would be if it would be prowess. I think that in this case, resolve is actually going to be the resistance.
I'm not going to try and resist that at all. I have 0 resolve.
So it would be 6 minus the lower of 2 dice rolled would be how much stress you take. Or you can just have this go south and
I'm gonna let it go south.
Okay. Yep. No, that's fine.
I may just take a friggin' couple invitations and run.
So she is actually still moving, and V, you do manage to turn her around, but as you're stumbling, kind of the combination of the 2 movements, you redirecting her and you bumping into her, manages to knock her down. And a noble falling is an event, and people are whispering and pointing. I heard she drank so much. I mean, look at her. She is on the ground, and you can hear the gossip starting, and you can feel how red this woman's face is through the mask in embarrassment. She begins to weep, and people start to come and investigate. Some of the guards are moving the spotlights in the general direction. Like, the heat is on right now. What do you want to do?
I feel like is this a moment we could have a flashback and
Yes, always.
say that we did something previously?
Yeah, let's think. How would the flashback work here?
So we could have.
The plan was to cause a commotion, and you had a plan to slip in after that would kind of be a general vibe.
Maybe we set
your plan was to make the scene.
Yeah, maybe we set something up with like a person previously to like create another diversion, one of our friends or something.
No, they were expecting a diversion. Like they were expecting a diversion. They've got like a little postern in the gate, like opened up, and they were just waiting for the diversion so that they could do it because it's like a creaky gate or something. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on how contrived the flashback is, it can be 0 stress, 2 stress, depending on how, like if it's something that, oh yeah, you would have done that. I want to have searched the body of the butler. Yeah, you probably would have done that. We just skipped it for time. 0 stress. 2 stress is I bribed this guy and now he knows the exact password for every single gate. Sort of like, all right, that's a stretch, would probably be more stress. This is, I think, somewhere in the middle. Things weren't going well. you were trying to avoid this. We saw you trying to avoid this happening, but if your plan was just to cause a commotion, maybe not this commotion, I think it's a 1 stress flashback. Which one of you wants to take that stress? Who set this up? All right.
I'm happy
so,
to. Yeah, I have
right,
I have
take a
one of my street contacts, like a guard, used to run with one of the gangs that I know, and I was like, "Hey, bro, I'm gonna make some noise. You get this gate open."
Okay, so yeah, the noise is happening, and you were stumbling before and acting. You're quick on your feet now. This is your moment, and both of you managed to take this opportunity and sneak in the gates. You're in the grounds, and you hear the commotion happening, but just being behind this gate, this lavish gate, you feel in a whole nother world. Even UV, who's used to having this nobility, it just feels different. I mean, everybody's dressed to the nines. There's just a buzz in the air. Nobody seems to notice you because everybody's so involved in just their conversations, the drinks, there's music. You're in this like plaza that leads up all these stairs to the front gates. It's held up with these columns. I mean, it's a beautiful manor that leads inside, but you're on the grounds now. What do you want to do from here?
I think we should proceed inside.
Yeah, and nobody's looking at you twice. They figure that the security would be adequate. So you guys managed to walk in, and I think we're just going to end it there. That you guys are inside. We are out about out of time, but you survived your first couple rolls in quite a daring way, if I do.
We're so daring.
Yeah. So thank you guys, thank you everyone for joining us. Definitely appreciate it. Please follow us at Heroes Die Show on all the social medias. Click all the buttons. We have a Discord link. If you want to play Blades in the Dark with me, or if you just want to talk about some of our fun shows, join our Discord. I'd also like to remind everyone that every Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. Central Time, we play Best Left Buried, our 5e campaign, and it's shaping up to be really fun. As far as I can tell, I think that our parties are about to meet, so you don't want to miss this episode. We'll all be together again. It's going to be this Saturday, 1 to 4 p.m. Central Time. Really hope that you can make it. We also have our YouTube and Twitch page. Click all the little buttons there, but really just join our Discord. We have a Patreon with all sorts of goodies on there. We have a merch store. We have a 5e module that's coming out for our Patreon exclusive offerings. And that'll
super
be
fun.
In just a couple of days. Jason's been hard at work on that. It actually ties in with the Best Left Buried campaign, so we might be able to get some feedback, pry it out of him on how that fits into the story there. But yeah, we're doing a lot of exciting stuff, and it's only because people like you watch this stuff, so we appreciate it. And I think that's everything.
That was so fun, and I can't wait to play more of this. Thank you, Josh, for teaching us.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. This is really, really cool. I'm very excited to dive in way deeper.
The Duskwalkers to be continued.
Yes. Yes. Bye.
Bye.